Armani Code Eau de Parfum 2024. I'm really hoping they don't do the same thing with the whole flanker stuff on this line.
Here's some codes to save you some cash on your next Middle Eastern niche or designer fragrances.
What's going on, guys? My name is Neeb. Welcome back to AROMATIX. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new Armani Code 2024, basically. I'd show you guys the box, but you already know what we do to the boxes here on this channel. But the presentation looks like so. So they have officially switched over into this more sleek design, I would say, I would call it. It kind of grew up. So this is a brand that I grew up collecting and having a lot of their fragrances. And actually is pretty interesting to watch the brand grow up, not just in terms of its scent profiles, but also in its presentation. So a more grown-up presentation style, if you will, and I personally enjoy it. I do think that it kind of gets boring, just the whole consistency of literally the exact same design, except for just Parfum and then nothing for Eau de Toilette and then Eau de Parfum. So it is what it is. Still not gonna complain because they do look pretty good. The one thing that I noticed about the caps and the differences is I really appreciated the magnetic with the Parfum, but everything else is click-on. And it's not necessarily that I don't enjoy click-on, but you do have to make sure that your atomizers are screwed in completely. Otherwise, I'll show you what will happen. So they have these to unscrew because you can refill them, and if they're not screwed in completely, it can, as you pick up the atomizer, eventually loosen the atomizer and potentially, dropping the whole fragrance, etc. So be wary of that, and that's pretty much it. Scent profile is something like this, or with the originals. I will start off with the EDT. Gonna give you guys a brief rundown of the actual scent profile, and the Eau de Toilette does take things a little bit classic. Still smells like the Armani Code Classic. It's nothing really groundbreaking. It just refines it and packages it into this new bottle. So nothing groundbreaking. The Parfum in itself adds iris, kind of giving it the more refined touch, if you will. And I personally love the note of iris. I think that this is absolutely the best one in terms of before the 2024, obviously. And I think that this is definitely better than the Eau de Toilette version. The addition of iris does create a level of sophistication, and it creates an office-safe fragrance that you can wear not only to the office, but also out and about and on dates, etc. And now they've released, or you could say re-released, the Armani Code Eau de Parfum, previously looking like this. So if you were to ask me, I would definitely say that these are better looking. I just wish that they did a little bit more changes, but even consistent with their older bottles, it still was pretty consistent, just different color gradients. In terms of the note breakdown and comparisons with this new one, we don't really get too much. They just give us green mandarin at the top, nutmeg heart in the mid, and then the base of tonka bean absolute. So they'll give you a little bit of a breakdown of the tonka bean absolute, recreating an accord of tobacco, basically, this earthy tobacco, etc. And the difference between this one and the older Eau de Parfum is evident right from there. There's no nutmeg, and there definitely isn't any tonka listed in the note breakdown, rather a lighter style of sweetness coming from a vanilla. So this, in fact, gets much closer to another note breakdown, which will give you much more of a note breakdown, Armani Code Profumo, which unfortunately was discontinued and had to have been one of my favorite flankers. And the good news is that the Eau de Parfum Armani Code, although not really making too much sense in terms of following on a flanker into the other bottles, and they probably weren't even trying to do that, this smells a lot like the Profumo. So I thought that this was one of their best ones. Absolute coming in number 2, this one being number 1. I was so addicted to the scent profile. It's got sweet tonka, a lot of leather, that green mandarin along with the nutmeg spice with a heart of lavender, that classic Code DNA, modernized, made so sexy, date night, nighttime appropriate, even signature scent worthy during the cooler weather. I have to be honest to say it's been quite some time since I visited this fragrance, but I did put a heavy dent in this bad boy. It was the perfect scent that really had contrasting notes of orange flower, cardamom, ambers, tonka, and leather, basically. I mean, there's nothing not to like about the fragrance, especially if you like sweeter, ambery leather fragrances. And this one pretty much recreates that, except there are some differences that's worthy of noting. So one of the biggest differences is the fact that it doesn't have as much spices as the Profumo, and not as thick. Actually, I could summarize the main differences between those two. So Profumo seeming to have a bit more of a thickness, and it's more than likely because of the fact that not only does it have green mandarin, but it's also supported by a note of orange flower, which is a white floral that can give a bit more of a fatty and creamy nature, also backed by a creamy leather in itself. This, the Armani Code Eau de Parfum, it could potentially have those notes, but if it does, it's a lot less than that. They only give us 3 note breakdowns, so we're not really left with much to do but speculate. But I can personally still sense a little bit of that orange flower, just not really the leather or the thick leather. Overall though, you get this leather-like accord, and it's more than likely coming from that accord of the Tonka Bean Absolute. Tonka Bean Absolute can come off a little bit leathery, wet, tobacco skin-like. And rather than having an actual leather note, you get this leather-like accord. So it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that I get like a leather accord, a tobacco accord, and a Tonka Bean accord, although I don't necessarily get too much of this tobacco. It does wear a little bit lighter, so the backbone of that lavender starts to shine a little bit more, and overall this fragrance to dry down a lot lighter of a wearing style fragrance than the Profumo. So if you were to remove basically the leather and some of those ambers that makes it really rich, dark, and creamy, you would end up with something like this basically. Tone down a little bit of that spice at the top and make it more mass appealing. I understand why they did that, genuinely. Profumo could have potentially been their top seller. I don't know if they had regulations in regards to the ingredients, etc. But what ended up happening to my nose personally is taking this scent profile and making it a bit more easy to wear and mass appealing and more appropriate for not only dates, but even to the office. So I don't think it's that far off. All things considered, it still smells pretty damn close. Where you're only gonna start sensing the difference, and I'm even speaking for myself, is like 20 minutes after. In the beginning, I almost relived the same experience as this one. So although I mentioned and noted a couple of differences, like it's not as spicy, etc., this is after I sat down and started studying it, basically. But on initial impression, when I took both fragrances, sprayed them on an atomizer and sniffed them, it was almost like sniffing damn near the same fragrance. I would say 90% close at the top. It's when they started to dry down that I would say this one started to veer off more towards the 80%, which if you really consider the facts, that's still pretty damn close. And that does us a favor in terms of reviving Armani Code Profumo. A modern day Armani Code Profumo, basically. If you didn't get to live through this fragrance, I would say that this is easily a respectable take and alternative to this fragrance in itself. The subtle differences of that 10 to 15% is only going to be in that later mid to dry down, where this one goes a little bit sweeter, more warm, ambery, and leathery, and that's pretty much it. I don't want to overcomplicate it or make it any more than what that is. That's it. That's the difference. Very similar fragrance with maybe about 15% difference, and most of that is going to be in the mid to dry down. The appropriation for the occasion starts to increase a little bit with that mass appealing factor, so now you can actually wear this fragrance to potentially the office. I would still personally prefer the Parfum, and then as I'm leaving the office or going on a dinner date, this would be perfect. I would say it's more appropriate for things like dinner dates or going out at night, going around town, etc., but its versatility is more versatile than just that. So that's what I think about the new Armani Code Eau de Parfum 2024, and this entire lineup has come a long way in terms of versatility, mass appeal, a more modern take on one of my favorites, Armani Code Profumo. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Make sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button. Until the next video, peace.